There, now it's letting me do it. I think I held that button down too long. So then I hit shut down and then it shuts down. And now it should just like do its thing and then whoop. And then I make sure that while we're waiting for that, that's the power cord, of course, that needs to be plugged in. And then this thing is what helps us send images to the mainframe. And so that has to be plugged in or they won't archive.
Okay.
Okay, so to turn it on, you just press the on-off button. Boop, once. Okay, so this is a screen that usually comes on when we're first doing it, and then this is usually the screen you see. So to do a quick and dirty ultrasound, this could be this, you can just go right from here and you can just start ultrasounding. You don't need to do anything else if this is something you don't want to save. But if you do want to save it, so for instance, like if you can see that would work. Mm-hmm. So you can just ultrasound just directly from that screen. If you want it to work with a patient, I hit the patient button here.
Okay.
And then that brings up this screen here. Now prior to EasyVet, I used to just hit new patient if this had anything filled in. And I used to just manually input this. But now, with EasyVet, you would go to your work list. And names pop up here, recent names. So what I'm going to do, I actually have not imported this kitty's information yet, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. Kitty's name is, what's that kitty's name? I'll figure it out.
I don't remember.
I'll put it in. He should be in there now. I just put him in. So then you use this query thing, and then here he is up on the list. So then I double click on that. Ooh. And all his stuff should be inputted in there. And then once I have that in, I choose what exam I'm going to do. I usually go between abdomen and cardio, but there's other things that you can do. This is actually, Dr. Smee told me, this actually stands for small parts. So if you're doing like a small mass under the skin, or when she did the thyroid, she used that as small parts. I had no idea what that meant. So anyway, we're going to do the abdomen on this kitty, Bryce. And so that's all set up. Here's our thing waiting to happen. And so I hit this preset button down here. And that lets me choose the abdomen size. Or if, for instance, I was accidentally on cardio, you could just switch back and forth between things. But I don't want to do that, so I'm going to go back here. And then it's a kitty, so my small abdomen is already chosen, so then I'm going to go to exit. And now we're ready to go.
Awesome.
Yeah, and so we have a timeout before the kitty is sleeping. I think they poke. And I want to see. So for this button, this is the frequency button, and it'll change up there. So that's a 10. So that's the megahertz. So the higher the frequency, the deeper the penetration, but the less detail. And so sometimes I'll just, if it's something that's not very deep and I want to get more detail, I'll just lower the megahertz to 6 or 8. I think ours doesn't go lower than that. Yeah, it'll give you the dunk dunk.
So do you stay on 6 routinely?
I actually stay on 10 routinely, unless I want to get, because our animals are pretty small.
Okay.
And then I sometimes, this button is the, I guess they call it the focus position. Oh no, this is a focus position. So this will move that up and down. And so if you have the screen filled and what you're interested in is up here, sometimes I'll roll those, and that's where your focal point is. It's where you're going to be most detailed. If it's a little bit more distal or far away from the probe, then I'll roll that down, and then it gives me the focal point right there. So I use that a lot too.
Okay. Is that where you usually leave it? It's kind of right there in the center?
I don't really leave it anywhere. It's just where it is, and then as I'm scanning stuff, I'll move it around if I need to. And so other things, I do remember this. The instructor said to always try to keep these in a row, and these basically will give you maximum brightness in the field. You can see that changing a little, or maximum darkness. You see how that's really dark. And so sometimes, I guess that could be, I usually kind of have, it's usually set mid-range, but sometimes, especially if I'm doing echoes, sometimes for whatever reason, part of the screen is a little darker. Sometimes I will push those up if I want to lighten one specific area of the screen
Okay.
in regards to another.
So those are one area of the screen.
Yeah, so
the
this is,
gradient-
if you
the
look
gradient,
here, this
like,
is
on
gonna,
side.
so for instance, if I put them all dark, you can see it better. So that will lighten that part,
I see.
that will lighten that part,
I see.
that will lighten
As
that
you go
part.
up,
Yeah.
okay.
And so
I
you can
see.
just lighten one aspect of the screen compared to others, something's too dark. And then the quick and dirty version is, wait, will this be enough light?
Yeah.
Is that better?
Mhm.
I can make more light.
That's fine.
Okay. And so if you don't have time to mess around with these buttons, this dial will do the whole screen all at once other than sliding those. So this will continue to brighten the whole screen.
Okay.
And then this will darken the whole screen.
Okay.
So sometimes I'll, yeah. And then if I press this button auto, it tends to darken the screen and give me a little bit more detail depending upon what I'm looking at, that button there. It's just either on or off. And so sometimes if it looks kind of gray to me and I want it to be a little more dark and detailed, I'll just press that button.
Okay.
Great job, you guys.
Is that good for now, or do you want to go over the buttons?
Is that Kitty sleeping yet?
You started to doze.
Okay, so we could go over more buttons. Okay.
Will you flip on the lights for me really quick, Paul, for this part? Never mind. Okay.
Okay, so this of course is your cursor, and so that will be useful if you want to access things on the screen.
Okay.
We can do this, we can use some of these buttons when we're actually doing stuff.
Okay.
This button here, the scan area, shortens the scan area, and so this is helpful. I'd use this a lot when I do my echoes, but if you want to focus in on one main area,
We'll narrow it.
it narrows it, but it makes it more detailed because the beam is just focused in that one area. And then so I do that, and then to get it to stay at that focal zone, I hit the enter button, and then it seems to stay.
Okay.
And then you can change that at any
Decide.
time. Usually when you go to a new patient, it resets as wide as it can go. I'm trying to think. We'll probably have to wait till we get the more. I don't think there's a right or a wrong way to the technique. If it's a fractious animal, I just start with the area of interest in case I don't get enough time. But if they're sleeping like this, then I just start, and I always just start cranially at the liver and just kind of work my way back. And so this is the zoom button here, this little circly thing. And so you can see how small everything is. So I just make stuff big so I can see it. But that is, I think, user preference. And so when I'm working with the liver, I start at the xiphoid, and in a small, non-deep chested animal, I just point cranially, and then I just angle the probe to the left and to the right, and all the while angling cranially to try to get some of that liver in there.
And that little knobby thing on the probe is always.
Yeah, I point that
very good,
forward.
right?
Yeah, that's pointed forward. Sorry, that's a good point. And so that's his little liver and gallbladder area. So that's the right side of the cat. So sometimes if I want to look at more of the liver, it might not be as useful in this little tiny kitty. But I'll just come over the ribs and I'll just angle in perpendicular to the ribs. And so sometimes in deeper chested dogs, I have to do this to kind of get that liver margin edge.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I'll do that.
Just go
But
through the ribs.
yeah, intercostal. And so that's that. That's his stomach. We didn't fast him as well as we could have. Smaller. Sometimes if I make it a little smaller, I get a little bit of a better perspective. Kind of point at the other side of the liver.
So you just kind of leave your hand.
On that focus knob.
Oh, not always, no.
No.
I usually, this hand just does whatever. Sometimes I hover it over the freeze button or
To get the best
yeah,
image.
because sometimes you just get a split second image and then that way I can get it. Like if I can freeze it immediately or take a video. So the freeze button freezes the image, and the P1 button saves the image. You could also, if you do not freeze it, you can just hit the P1 button, and that takes a 3-second video. And I sometimes find that's a little bit more helpful for me if I'm reviewing my old things to get kind of a real-time video of it. So he looks a little mottled in there, like hyperechoic little spots, but not so bad in there. It's not liking what we're doing there. So that's that. There's his stomach full of food. Ideally, it would be more empty. So that's his stomach coming in there.
Mm-hmm.
I think stomachs are hard.
They are.
Because it's like gas.
Yeah, gas
In
and
your face.
yeah, and it's sometimes if they're not truly fasted, then it'll
And that's
cover
it
the
right
liver.
there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mhm. And so sometimes in the kitty, you can get that real. See, it's full, so you probably won't get it. But you can
Yeah.
get that real kiwi-looking appearance to it, and it's very, very like classic. So you know that that's what it is.
Okay.
But I'm not getting that with him here because it's full. So if I freeze the image and I'm like, oh, I just missed it, you can take the rolly ball and roll it backwards or forwards to move your image when it's frozen.
Cool.
And then, so this button here, called calc, can you read that? Does that say
Mhm.
calc?
Calc.
And then I press it and that measures. And so I press calc, I hit enter, that sets my measuring tool, and then I roll the ball in any direction to measure. And then when I get it where I want the other side, I press that again and that measures. And then I hit the save button and that'll save my measurement. And then to make the video go again, you just unfreeze the freeze button.
Okay.
So I'm going to make that a little smaller again. Okay, so then I usually roll, personally me, I usually roll to this kidney here.
To the right kidney.
Yeah, that's what I do, and so that's actually a fairly good image. And so when I image the kidneys, I try to roll through it longitudinally, and then I usually will save that, and then I'll roll through it end to end, and make sure I'm not missing any.
So you just press P1 for that to get
Yep,
the 3
that
second
gets a
video.
3-second
Okay.
video, and then I'll freeze that, and then I can
Measure
measure
it.
this kidney. Again, if the animals, sometimes I don't take the time to do this while the animal's awake.
You're going to do it afterwards?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I go to this kidney because oftentimes I can, like I always use my surgical experience. Oh, it finally decided to work. That sucks. To help me. And so I know that the duodenum runs right there by the kidney. And so then I can sometimes follow that up into the stomach. And that's how I follow the duodenum. Or find the duodenum, is it's usually right by the kidney, and that's that structure right in there. Okay, so that's that with that kidney. Then I'll roll over to the other kidney. And sometimes, cats are usually pretty easy to get their kidneys. Sometimes I think dogs are harder to get a kidney image, especially that right one. And so like I'm gonna do with this kitty, he's a little bit turned away from me. I'll just roll on a little bit so I'm a little bit more lateral on the kidney, and sometimes that helps me image it a little better. So again, I'll just kind of roll through that kidney.
So do you usually do the kidneys then before the spleen?
Yeah,
Even
that's
in
how
dog?
I do it. I don't think it matters how you do it,
Even in a dog?
even in
So you
dogs.
just go, you go liver, stomach, right kidney, duodenum, left kidney.
Yeah, and it depends. So sometimes while I'm up there, I'll look for the pancreas.
When you're in the duodenal area.
Yeah, I'll show you, like, because I know where it is surgically,
Right,
like,
me
you know
too.
where it is, so, you know it would, if you can find the duodenum, that's why I tried to learn how to find that. I won't be able to do it on a cat, I don't think, because I'm not that good at it, but Dr. Smee did tell me how to find the adrenals on these guys, and I have been practicing that. But just so you know, for the video, she says she does it lateral, so she finds the kidney, and then she just angles the probe deep. But I don't know if I'm going to find it in a little tiny cat. So I'm not even going to try. So there's a spleen. It's always right by the left kidney, and it's tiny in a cat. It's right up there, so we can make it bigger. And then here, you see how my focal point is way down there, and my spleen is way up there? So then I'll go boop, 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 boop. Oh, it's basically as far up as it's going to go, because it's small in a cat, so I can't really get that in. Oh, I might be able to play with no, it doesn't really do it. I can't really get that the spleen to go
So you
farther
used-
away.
You didn't use Zoom, you used that.
This,
Focus-
yeah,
focus
yeah,
position-
use the
position,
focus
last
position,
one,
yeah.
last toggle
So,
one.
yeah. And so, and I often will get the spleen coming lateral. That's how just I learned to do
Even
it.
in a dog or?
Even in a dog. But sometimes you can also get it like I'm coming at it more direct on top of it. And then when I go through the spleen, I kind of just try to, in a cat it's pretty easy because they're small and you can always get the head of that spleen. That's coming up. What is that? Oh, that's probably stomach I'm getting. So I try to just kind of roll through it. So now I'm fanning through the spleen, like I'm waving my probe like this, and while I'm going back.
So you're kind of waving it back and forth
Back and
as you're
forth.
going down.
And that's especially important in a dog when that spleen's big and you might miss a mass if you're
If
not waving
back
it.
and forth.
Yep.
Okay.
And then in a cat it's a little bit harder. In a dog it's a little bit easier to see where that vessel comes into the spleen. Maybe we make it bigger and see it. But maybe right in there is probably going to be where your splenic artery is coming in. So sometimes that's where I'll take my measurement of that. And cats are usually, so to label stuff, I just start typing. And it starts typing there, and then the rolly ball moves it to wherever you want.
Great.
And then you hit enter, it locks it in place, and then P1, and it takes the image and saves it. So then that's annoying because that stays there for some reason. So if you just hold down the clear button down here, it gets rid of that image.
In the video?
Yep.
But your saved image
But my image is saved.
with the spleen label?
Yeah, with the spleen label that's already saved in
Okay.
there. Okay. I'm gonna put more goo on there. He's doing okay?
Doing beautifully.
The number sounds good on that. And so, here, let's go back to this part. So it's more stomach and two cranium. Okay. So sometimes, like I said, I'll look for that duodenum in there, and then I know it's going up into the stomach.
Mm-hmm.
And then so I'll look in this area.
The pancreas.
Yeah.
Okay.
Usually that's duodenum is on top of that kidney. Like usually I see it
Right
up
above
it.
it.
Usually I see it above
It's
it,
like
but
the
I'm not
kidney's
seeing it
wearing
there.
it.
Yeah. Today it seems to be more down in
Below.
here.
Yeah.
I guess that's maybe just where the guts may fall. But I'm pretty sure that's because nothing else is GI
Right there.
up there. Mhm. Okay, so the bowel I think is also something that it took me a little while. So I usually magnify reasonably well for this. And I just scan around for multiple sections of bowel. I find it a little bit easier to go caudal to that kidney and just kind of in the caudal left and right quadrants back there. And so,
There it is.
yeah, so there's multiple things there. So, here, I'll freeze that. Okay, so serosa, muscularis, submucosa, mucosa, lumen. So this is all lumen in there. So when I do my measurements, I might be able to see better on this side. Oops, sorry. So that's kind of the lumen right there. And then I'm going to go out to serosa and I'm going to measure that. And let's see if I can get some that has a little bit better. So his bowel, so cats are weird. Basically and this is all in that art thing, the sheet, the information I have typed up from that class I took. See, his is so modal, it's hard for me to capture it. But his has normal ratio, so the mucosal layer should always be more than the submucosal layer. So if that submucosal layer starts getting, the muscularis layer, if that muscularis layer starts getting big, that indicates disease. So it goes bright lumen, dark mucosa, bright submucosa, dark muscularis, bright serosa. So the four layers are there. So it goes dark, bright, bright. So that's kind of how you find your layers. And in a cat, we don't have a good enough probe for this, but sometimes you see striations that can indicate a problem, or this
In the muscularis.
or the mucosa. And then sometimes the submucosal layer is very bright. So when I look here, it just looks like railroad tracks all over the place. And sometimes, subjectively, if I'm seeing that, and maybe there's hypermotility to the bowel, that would indicate to me, hey, maybe that's my problem.
Infiltrative and or...
Yeah. So this kitty doesn't actually look that bad, although to look at his bowel, it does look a little thick, subjectively, but the layer architecture is okay.
That's good. So maybe it's just the tray.
Maybe the crypto. Let's look at more stuff. Sorry, I'm running out of.
Okay.
Sure. Is there alcohol on that side? Yeah.
Sounds good.
This cat's not hungry right now, Sierra.
What?
This
No,
cat's
this is
hungry.
for me. This is tropics. The triage. Sounds good. Diarrhea kitten coming in.
Oops, that was the wrong button because I didn't have my hand in the right place. So I try to get the measurements longitudinally. You could also just, you could also get like an end on, more of a transitional thing, like a transitional measurement. I don't think there's a right or a wrong to that.
Transverse.
Transverse, yeah. That's pretty good. So that I don't know if I keep looking at the same bowel layer, but that mucosa does look a little like busy in there to me. That measures okay, 0.24. And you can see like the thickness of that is going to change depending upon
Whether
if there's
there's a
peristaltic
contraction or
wave.
not,
Yeah.
yeah.
So this area back here is looking almost what I would call a little more train tracky. So here's that button that makes it all dark at once and all light at once. So that's kind of how that.
That's the auto button.
Yeah, that's that button there. So all dark, all white.
So yeah, I agree. I can see some train tracks in there. I wonder if that's colon.
Let me make it a little smaller maybe. Sometimes I get a bit of a better perspective if I make the image a little... I mean, if the cat has tritric, then, or sorry, has crypto, then he's gonna have inflammation in there. So the other thing I do, let's quick look at his little wee bladder just to be thorough. It's probably gotten in there because he's a little brazen. Or maybe he just did squeeze out diarrhea, so there's probably just... Yeah, where is his bladder? Oh, kidney. Oh, there it is. There, but
Small.
tiny. A little busy. It's a little contracted bladder. So with the urinary bladder, two things. The harder you push, the more squished it gets. So sometimes a very light touch, especially with a contracted bladder like that, is easier. But that's tiny. Okay. And then, so sometimes there is a way, I'm sure, to hunt for mesenteric lymph nodes. And sometimes I don't know how that is. I asked Dr. Smee about it. So I just kind of drive around and look for them, like see if I see anything that I would think is a lymph node. I'll see if I see any with this kitty. And so it would be a little bit, sometimes if they're abnormal, they're more hypoechoic, but a uniformly dense lymph node-y looking structure. In the abdomen, and I usually kind of find it a little bit caudally if I'm going to find it. So like I said, I'm sure there's a better method to do it than just looking around. Like I'm sure they live here and this is how you find it. But I just kind of drive around and see if I see anything. Sorry, little tiny bladder. And so if I saw lymphadenopathy, that would be more concerning to me. Sorry, I know this part's boring, but it takes me a while to kind of scan through everything.
So you're just kind of starting at a point and
Yeah,
going
and I'm
back
just
and
going,
forth.
I'm just kind of going up and down the abdomen
Okay.
and just kind of
Mhm.
slow, yeah. And I didn't really see anything there. Sometimes I feel like I just get lucky. Oh, boop, there it is. So I feel like if I see them, great. If I don't see them, that doesn't rule it out that they're big.
Right.
But I have found several that are big, and so it makes me think like if they're significantly enlarged, I should see them.
Okay.
This cat's a good eater, right? Yeah, he had his bowls empty this morning.
No, he's a
Oh, the other thing, sometimes I'm like, is that a lymph node or is this a structure? That has stuff moving in it, but sometimes I'll hit this color here, this color button here, click, and then the rolly ball moves it, and so if there's blood flow through it, then I'm looking at a vessel, not a lymph node.
Okay.
So sometimes if I'm like, is it not, I'll use that color to see.
And so you just roll the
And then
cursor
the
up to
cursor,
thing.
the cursor moves the color thing around. So like right there actually, no, see that's gonna be, so right there I'm like, oh, is that lymph node? But watch,
Blood.
we'll put the color on it. So I'm not seeing anything in that guy up there.
But the
See what
other
I
one,
mean?
yeah.
So
that
let's
could
see,
be a lymph
that
node.
could be a lymph node. But that's what a lymph node would look like to me. So I bet that is one. And you know what, if that's near the root of the mesentery, that's where it would live. Oh no, I lost it. Oh. So let's freeze before we lose it again, and let's measure it. I have it quite magnified, so that's a 0.5 centimeter. So I mean that's easily could be a normal.
Mesenteric lymph node.
Yeah. I'll just save it like that for now. And then, so to move on, you just unfreeze, and then everything will go away. So that's kind of what I look for, like it's just that uniform lymph node-y appearance in there. And again, it might very well just be hit or miss sometimes. Sometimes if they're big, you'll see them in clump, like clump, 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 you know, like they are in the root of the mesentery.
Yeah.
You know, so that might be another one there, although it does look like stuff is flowing through it. Oop, wrong thing, sorry. But nothing, so there's nothing flowing through that, so I think that's probably another lymph node. And I think it's separate from the first one I saw. Oops, wrong button. So those measure okay to me. I mean, we're talking less than 1 centimeter, so. Okay. So where is that so we know for reference? So that looks like it's almost a little in front of that kidney there. So those might actually be gastric, although the stomach's way over there. So I don't know, anyway. Okay, so for me, I think I've got all my images, and so I would probably be done. Make that bigger and see if we can get one more vowel. Not like that. And it is, I think, a little hypermodal. You can see it's just kind of all pretty fluid filled and moving around. One other thing you can look for, if you find the bladder, it's a little harder in a kitty because they're smaller. Let's see, I come in laterally, and you can sometimes I'll follow the aorta down to the iliac, the bifurcation, and look for the lymph nodes. And again, it's one of those things, if I don't see it, it doesn't rule it out for me, but if I do see it, then maybe that's important. So here's he's just not as dark as a dog, but you can see that almost looks like the bifurcation. You can see it pumping right there.
Yeah.
And then I would just look for anything that would look like a lymph node in that area.
Okay.
Okay, that's all I have. Do you have any other questions or
Nope.
anything?
So now that you're done, just walk us through.
Okay. Okay, so that just looked weird to me. I mean, clearly that's vascular, but it just looks big to me. I saw it before too. Maybe. Centimeter. Oh, maybe not. I mean,
Magnified.
yeah, that's probably okay. Okay, yeah. Okay, so then when I'm done, the first thing I do is clean the probe off so it doesn't get all nasty with dried stuff. So I just take a clean hot towel and dampen it, and then clean the probe off really good, and then nooks and crannies. And then I drape that, and then I wipe the kitty off. I have my assistant wipe the kitty off. I have a lovely assistant. And then for this, so if I want to go ahead and make any like markings, so say, okay, so this is your line of images. So we have many lines of images. So I'll click that up to the top. So this is our very first image. So again, if you wanted to mark that, that was our right liver. So I just start typing, right liver, lobe, and then you can move that anywhere you want. Boop. So I hit enter, and then save, and that'll save it. And then we don't have to do every one here. Let's say, I think I already marked spleen. And so I think that this might be a lymph node, so YMPH node. It takes away the markings for some reason. So I just start typing lymph node, and since I'm not 100% sure, where's the question mark? Yeah, question mark. And then enter to lock it in place, and then to measure that. I think these are both.
May I steal your patient?
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
And did you get reversal for him?
Yep.
And so every time you want to do a new measurement, you just keep hitting the calc. So calc, enter, move the ball to where you want it. So there's where I want it, then enter, locks it. And there is my measurements, and then save it again. Yep. And so I don't think I really need to measure or notate on anything else.
Show me again how you toggle between images on that.
Oh, so
bar.
you can do one of two things. You can go the uppy downy arrows here.
And you're using that button.
I'm
the
sorry,
enter
yes,
button.
the enter button.
Okay.
So the cursor, oops, well, it looks like the cursor gives you an idea. So the cursor and then the enter button to
Okay.
scroll up and down. Or you can use this goes one at a time, image by image.
Okay.
If you go to that
So
menu
if you
bar,
use the menu bar, then it just brings up the image.
image by image, yep.
Okay.
And then this goes row to row.
Okay.
Okay, so then I'm done with that. So when I'm done, I hit the end exam button, end exam. And then if there's any like, oh, I screwed up, like for instance, this and this are the same, I just label that one. So if there's any I want to delete, I highlight it, and you can highlight more than one at a time. And then you go to delete, and then it'll ask you, and then you say yes. And so like this one is a double, so we'll get rid of that. And I just do that so there's
much
less
space.
storage, yeah. And so once you're done saving everything the way you like it, you go to permanent store, and it stores. And this takes a little while. The more we wind up storing, the longer this takes. And so this, take a couple, I don't think we're supposed to be storing them like this. I don't know how else, because when we took it into be service, they're like, wow, you have 7 billion images stored. And
You
so,
probably need like a thumb drive or something.
or I don't know, but see, we need to be able to bring up past ultrasounds, so if you didn't permanently store them, they would just go away. I do feel these all go to the main computer, so they are stored,
So
but it
maybe
is nice
if
to
we had
have.
a thumb drive though, we could just.
Yeah, maybe.
Put
I
it
would
in
like to
there and
ask
look
the
person,
ultrasound person what she recommends. Or
Yeah.
maybe I'm doing it wrong. Like maybe we're not supposed to be using permanent store. I don't know. God bless.
Sorry.
And so once that's done, they're all stored. And then I just, sometimes I walk away and leave it like this, but you can also, to be friendly to your next user, is hit the patient button down here, which brings up the go-to screen, and then I hit it once more. And then I hit new patient, and then that clears everything, so it's all ready to go again.
Okay.
The end.